Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 29th, 2023 meeting of the Open Space and Recreation Committee. We've got a quorum in attendance, so we'll go ahead and get started. So the first item on the agenda for tonight is approval of meeting minutes. Amy did send out quite a few copies of previous month's minutes. Did everyone have a chance to take a look? You've been completed?
Well, I say no, and that means everyone did not. So I don't see anybody else fast enough. I can never.
So you gotta rephrase that question. Does anybody have any comments?
Does anybody have comments? Yeah. That's Do we want to take a minute to perhaps look them over real quick and then get those approved?
Yeah, I mean,
There's a lot because they keep getting pushed off.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I
Can we
sort
put
of
that
looked
up
at all
next
of
week
them.
then? Because honestly, I'm not gonna sit here and read all these right now. Or we can just, I'll just abstain.
How does the committee feel? Do we want to go one more meeting? I mean,
Is anybody really gonna read it before you do everything though? That's
Well, if I say I did, I will.
there you go.
howdy. Right. So Jerry, are you comfortable with?
Yeah, and if you want to abstain.
Okay. All right. So we want to run through possible edits. I know that there were just two sets of minutes that I noticed just needed some further detail added. I think we were for the two workshops and for our last meeting. So the last meeting, I believe it was just the end time we were missing, which I believe took note of. It does not appear that I did.
I will just take off that line. How's that sound?
That works.
Works.
And then for the two workshop meetings, I believe.
I actually checked with Diana. We don't need minutes for those.
Oh, we don't? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Excellent.
So even easier.
So we're good. So would anybody like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 31st, 2023, March 22nd, June 7th, June 28th, and 7/26
25, but yeah.
as amended? We have a second? All right, it's perfect. It's moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Perfect. All right.
And one abstain.
And one abstention. Sorry. That's okay, Jerry. All right. So moving on, we've got member updates. Are there any member updates? Any staff updates?
I just have one because it's come up in this meeting that we are going to try to boost the community preservation to 2% at this town meeting.
Awesome. That's cool. Yeah.
Well, whether it will happen.
I know, but you're
Yeah,
really
so try.
That's the push.
I gotcha.
And there seems to be, sort of wishy-washy, but Mark can correct me, but there seems, Mark, in terms of the selectmen supports it, but in general, they, it's got support.
Okay, that's great.
Excellent.
It's 2% of what? Housing sales?
No, 2% of your tax bill. It's 1% now. So for the average house, it's $100 or something. I think maybe 80 something bucks.
And it starts after the first
100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and there are a lot of exemptions that are available, which are not very few people take advantage of, but for income and age.
The first time 1,000? So when the first time you pay taxes?
It's automatic.
The first 100,000 of your home value is exempted, and then you do the calculation of the tax rate based on the assessed value minus 100,000, and then you take currently 1% and propose 2% of that.
But it seems to be a common misconception that it's 2% of your home value,
Yeah.
which is not the case.
Much larger.
Yeah.
Number, correct. In fact, our tax rate is less than 2%. So
right, any other member or staff updates? And Mark, did you have any updates for us or anything about that? No. All right, any public input? Don, did you have anything for us tonight?
No, although if there's a draft, I know you're looking at draft, it'd be nice to have some access to it maybe after. And because I will put in some comments, I'd like to, have a little more time to go through it.
Certainly.
And I don't know where that would be, whether it's, on Drive, someone's Drive or something, or.
Well, I have it printed out. I'm gonna use it for this meeting. I'll just give you my copy.
Right.
It's just the draft of the vision statement at this point.
Excuse me.
Just the draft of the vision statement, not the whole.
Oh, okay, whatever there is.
Small bites.
Whatever works in progress, yeah.
Don, I can actually forward it to you right now if you'd like, so you can have a look on your phone if you're interested.
Okay, so
Let me get really quick. Sorry, everybody. I said that, now I can't find it.
I guess while you're waiting, one of the things I can update, Jack and Peter on, so we send out postcards when we do our registrations for every season. So, I'll see if I can put that up. There we go. So I did put on there the important dates. So the last and third public hearing is on that postcard. So that goes out to every home in Littleton, and some surrounding areas too. So, that was kind of a nice bonus to be able to throw that on there. So, we'll get back on to, advertising for, this last meeting, pretty soon here.
One more comment for us, especially for the planners. We are pretty close to starting construction on the new senior center. Which is that?
Are we? I thought it got pushed back to November now.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but to me, that's
That's
pretty
close.
close.
It is. Well, I mean, but it's like one of those things.
So
is it gonna happen in
They
November,
came
or are we
before the
gonna-
planning board and they didn't really have a complete presentation. They were really
Okay.
frustrated, but that was on them.
Yeah,
And so anyway, so it's,
Okay. So we're moving.
I mean, but I don't know if it's gonna be part of this report or not.
I mean, the only real component is more of the, losing the tennis courts.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's just, it says we're just doing open space and recreation.
Well, they have a bocce court. drawn.
Are they gonna get it?
No.
Okay,
But it's planned.
okay, I got you.
It's not
Yeah,
gonna
no,
be-
that'd be a really great thing to add in
Yeah.
there for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
They do a fitness room, if that counts.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it should count,
Yeah.
because I don't know if we ordered that in our values, but, it is for recreation and
Yeah.
for a good part of our population.
Sure, yeah.
I doubt the bocce court gets removed, it's not that expensive.
Well, I was wondering,
Sorry,
if this,
Has it? Oh,
Yeah.
when? It wasn't in the last plans.
Well,
I haven't seen plans.
no, the bocce court is on the plans, but he said that it wasn't in the contract.
Right.
But is it a CPC project and would it be eligible? It's open to the public, I mean,
Surely.
Recreation?
I mean, it's on the,
Is it-
it's on the lawn
Is
on
that-
Shattuck Street in
Yeah.
town.
Other restrictions of you have to acquire by CPA funding in order to add to anything.
I think by creating recreation, it would be eligible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing that I was thinking, since I've just been to these various meetings, I was, well, maybe, yeah.
It'd be a nice addition.
Yeah, well, it would be, it's on the Shattuck Street lawn, so, it would be available to,
Can't do it until construction is done anyway, so.
oh, I know, this is,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, any updates from Dodson and Blinker? Jack and Peter, did you have anything, outside of our discussion items for tonight that you wanted to add on?
I just wanted, is Don with you there? Is that Don?
Oh, yes, Don, yeah.
Yes,
Great. I just wanted to follow up. I think in the last meeting, Don, you had some good points that you raised, and you were gonna type those up and share them, maybe some information about some connections around Long Lake and other items. I think from, let's see, maybe some unfinished projects from the last plan that you had in mind. Do you know what I'm
Yes.
talking?
Yes, so I will do that. I'm just finishing up another project, so I do have some rough notes and I will do that. So where should I send those comments? I guess also I was mentioning, if you have sort of a work in progress draft, I could review that and make comments on that too. So you're obviously one of the prime people to send it to, and maybe then copy it to Andrew as well. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that's great. Yeah, and I don't know if you'd want to be involved in that, Alicia or Amy. Alicia and Amy have been on a lot of our emails as well, but that's up to them.
Yeah, I assume it would just be copied around.
Yeah,
That would be great. It's so easy for things to slip through without seeing them in writing. So if just wanted to make sure you're able to share that if you had a chance. And in terms of a draft, I mean, for now, we're just looking at as I think Amy mentioned, we're just looking at the vision statement and then the draft of goals and actions. So we'll be continuing working on the whole plan. Don, are you referring to just those sections when you're requesting those?
Whoever is available. I mean, it's the more time I have, the better I can help you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I had one thing. One of the conversations we had with Don was the extension of Lakeshore Drive onto Two Brothers Trail. And I got a copy of the settlement, and it said 10 years from the date of the settlement, which was 2008. So we can continue the trail from Lakeshore Drive to Two Brothers Trail is available for the lawsuit. We can proceed now.
Yeah, the judgment I think was finalized in 2010, so that ability came in 2020. We've looked at it, it's all wet. Not to mention in front of someone's house.
That's a Rick Finley's home. Well, in front of somebody's house that's allowed.
That's,
They agreed to it.
yeah, but it's not the best situation. It would have to be a boardwalk the whole way.
yeah.
Okay.
So there's the path that does connect to the NEF land, but also there was the Old Town Beach there. That is overgrown as
Yeah.
wetland.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor. We didn't get the extension of Lakeshore Drive in that settlement. We just got the beach, essentially the area right next to the lake. So anyway, I think it's worthwhile to pursue that, even if we have to put a boardwalk, then I guess we have to put a boardwalk. That's what the Comm says.
I think that would make a lot of sense.
It doesn't have to be a raised boardwalk. It could be a low boardwalk, but it makes a lot of sense for people who are on the road just to continue to walk around the lake rather than have to take a dog leg up and around, which most people.
Right, most of the lake you can circumnavigate except it's just a few points.
Yeah.
And that would be a critical link. Right
Well,
now, Martha Child's.
You have the link, it's just on the other side of the house, the trail.
Right.
We see
Now
that.
it is.
Right, it's a
Right.
temporary trail through the kindness of Martha Child's. But she offered that as a temporary.
Well, through the settlement, yeah.
Oh, no, I mean, she actually offered it on her land. She wasn't part of the legal suit. She was just being kind.
It's mentioned in the suit.
Yeah.
That you would use that, and then that would close down once the path along the lake opened up. So
Yeah.
that was always the intention to proceed with that connection. And I think if we put it in this plan, that would give us a little firepower, especially if we have to get some funds to go forward.
Right.
Like
especially
a
for-
LELWD grant?
Whatever.
CPC, right?
I'd have to go back and double check. I forget where that area lands on the NEP side of things. I know it's real rocky and steep over there. But yeah, I mean, town council's double checking that interpretation is correct, is that we kind of, for eternity, have one or the other trail. As soon as we build one on the park, the other easement goes away. We don't get both of them.
And I was just, informally involved from the Conservation Trust, and my understanding that, I'm repressing the name of the attorney that lives there, that over the land.
Silverberg?
Excuse me?
Silverberg.
Silverberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we agreed not to go to court because you sometimes get crazy decisions. We thought we could outlast them. And my understanding when we were putting together our general comments, but I haven't seen the settlement, was that, you know, give them life tenancy, but if he moved away, yeah, he would have to give it back to the town.
Yeah, it was 10 years moving out and no longer resigning, yeah, selling it, we're no longer resigning.
So it's sooner, and that sounds even better. And you do see the continuation.
So we have the right now to build it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is all for future planning, but I thought it would be good if we got it into the open space and rec committee.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the purpose of this is then to get funding to make it happen. If we put it specifically in there, then it'll help us get money.
Yes.
Being that it's gonna cost money to put in a board.
The address there, John, if cares
That is
to
the hope.
Aspen.
I'll put that on the table.
That's perfect, thank you. All right, Jack and Peter, any other outside updates before we dive into our main topics for tonight?
I don't think so. Peter,
So I'm here on mute, Peter.
Thank you. I didn't really have anything to say.
Oh, thank you. All right, so we will dive into our next agenda item for tonight then, and that is the continued review of the public input survey results. Jack and Peter, did you have anything to add from our last meeting in terms of data or findings from last time around?
sure, and I'll share my screen now if that sounds all right.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I need to make you a co-host. Okay, you should be able to.
Awesome, thank you. We're gearing up for fall, so here's a nice picture. I think that's Nagog Hill Orchards. And as with this slideshow, I'll just go over what we have in mind for our presentation and discussion. We'll briefly go over the community survey updates, and that will lead into a discussion of the draft community vision, and then draft goals and objectives, and looking at both those drafts and the structure of how those will play into the action plan, the 7-year action plan. And if we have time, we can start talking about some actions. I think there'll be a lot to talk about for the vision and the goals and objectives. While we're reviewing some of these goals and objectives in the vision, we'd love to get some consensus from the group about if there's any clarifications and questions, and making sure we're on the right page, and or can provide more information if needed. Things that the committee agrees with, things that the committee disagrees with or has questions or concerns about, and then anything we want to modify or add. So that's our goal through this discussion. But just to go back to the community survey, so I think the last when we met in July, we went over a pretty robust review of the survey. At that point, there were 395 responses. We got 7 more in the remaining few days before it closed, which didn't change any of the results in any significant way. So we don't need to go through all of the results again. Those are, if you missed it, those are in the last slideshow, which hopefully you have access to. If you don't, feel free to please email me. Just as a sample of some of the comments that I think we didn't spend as much time on the comments last time, and we won't spend much time on it now. But as with any survey, there's sort of an array of views. One of the themes of discussion has been Littleton's rural sense of being a rural place, and some people felt that that sense should be promoted and improved, maintained and improved by more preservation. Some people felt that the town is already beautiful and needs more attention to its downtown spaces, and having more maybe connections in some of the more built environment, which the bike ped plan has been addressing. Some people felt like thinking about when to open up open space for trails and when to maybe not do that and let them be protected for wildlife and ecological reasons. And one person, there's some comments on when the people had to choose their values. They had trouble. They felt like they supported all the values that were listed in the survey, but they said in their comment to choose the long-term priorities and values over short-term. But that leads into a look at sort of what values and priorities could inform this plan as we crafted a vision statement. And so looking back, this is one of the community survey questions we looked at last time. Question 9 asked about goals and values. We found, not surprisingly, that drinking water is on, everybody cares about that. It had the highest weighted average score, and then followed by beauty and character in the landscape, youth development, and enjoyment and quality of life. We kind of looked at, these are all important to a lot of people. I think that was actually a big comment. Several people commented on this question that all of these goals and values felt important. It was hard to rank them. I think for this question, they had to choose their top 3. But it is helpful information to look at what came out on the most commonly chosen goals and values. So we looked at, I guess, these top 6 in particular. And interestingly, climate resilience was not as ranked as high. We compared that with input from the public meeting 2, which we looked at last committee meeting as well. And the station that looked at priorities and values, for people talked a lot about physical, mental, and social health. That came up the most, a total of 31 times, followed by ecological health, and then youth development. So these feel like important themes to bring into the vision statement and into our goals for this plan. And once again, all of these are important, but just thinking about what we really want to make sure we discuss. Another feature of the last public meeting that Peter talked about last time was connectivity, and that's been a big theme. And so just looking at all the different possible connections through town and how this plan can help make those happen in tandem with the bike ped plan. And the bike ped plan is, really focused on streets, and then this, the open space and recreation plan can build on that and also maybe think about trails and off-street paths as well.
Yeah. And excuse me, Jack, if I could interject. It sort of just occurred to me, seeing this again, that there's this sort of longstanding initiative, especially with the ped bike plan, to connect people to the natural landscape and to the existing conservation areas, connect those together. And that was a big part of the last open space and recreation plan. I think what this exercise is sort of suggesting is that we think strategically as we're sort of connecting people to places with trails and bike paths, is to think about prioritizing that effort in terms of also connecting people to these cultural landscapes, if you will. So it's like, if we're going to create a bike path or a walking path to connect certain places, let's really think about connecting these places that people have said are so special, and not just do it sort of randomly or as a matter of what's possible, but really try to make an effort. And then that really goes to then the idea of sort of celebrating the history of the town, celebrating these special places. And then that all, I think, has a lot of spin-off benefits in terms of connecting people to the things they care about.
Yeah, and I think I might actually pause here since these first slides were a review, segueing from the, update on the community survey into a full review of public input that we went over last time. And if there's any questions or comments so far from the committee, and then we'll talk about the vision statement and how these lead into the vision statement.
Just one thing I wanted to bring up. You said that the bicycle and pedestrian plan is more associated with streets, but there's the open streets plan that I think is more associated with streets. I think bicycle and pedestrian is both streets and paths to connect things. And then open space and recreation sort of focuses on maybe connecting open spaces and recreation, very similar to the bicycle and pedestrian. But complete streets is the one that talks about the streets and creating bicycle ways along the streets and sidewalks on the streets. So there's a slight difference between all three, but I don't think it's correct to say that the bicycle and pedestrian is limited to streets.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Yeah, actually, has that plan been published at this point? Do you know?
No,
Not yet, no.
it's getting close.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my impression from meeting with the planners was they sort of encouraged the open space and rec plan to focus more on trails, since the bike ped plan was focused more on street infrastructure. But maybe that might not be accurate.
Check back in with them.
Yeah, I've been trying to get them to include things like, the Long Lake connection and some of those larger ones. They're certainly not looking at internal trails. But I believe they were looking at connecting, some of those bigger non-street connections between open spaces. But a lot of it is on streets.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Just a comment, I'm here as the public, for the historic sites. The Massachusetts tribe considers the Nagog Hill Orchard also historic. The town was created, Mass Bay Colony set aside 500 acres at the Praying Indian Plantation. That included the orchard. And now they've walked there and seen some ceremonial stone landscape rock formations. And I think they will be bidding on the RFP. That's their top. One of their leaders is currently a resident of Littleton and lives at the cottage at Littleton Conservation Trust, the Sarah Dudley Forest. And his niece, who may be the chief, ascending chief, wants to move in and is very much interested in that area. They consider it spiritual important. So that should also be considered historic. And they probably planted some of the first trees there on the orchard. So just a comment.
Thanks, Don.
Any other committee questions or comments on the input received the last or at public meeting number 2? All right, Jack, keep moving.
Great. So one other source of input that's important to all of this is the vision and goals outlined in the master plan. So try to have these plans talking to each other and building off of one another. So looking at what the master plan lays out for its vision and goals, the opening section, introduction, talks about history and character, talks about a town that plans for changes in the landscape. So, one thing we know is that nothing stays the same and change is inevitable. So how to plan for that. And that can include sustainability of facilities and services and connected and accessible transportation. And these relate to the open space and recreation plan, I think. And the goals in this section also talk about maintaining small town character through stewardship of natural resources and working farms. In terms of planning for the future, adopting policies that can guide sustainable development, improving safety and ease about getting around town and connecting the pieces that are sort of throughout Littleton with pedestrian and bike connections, and then promoting history and preserving historic resources. So it goes on in talking, sort of laying out some strategies for a thriving town, and emphasizes connectivity, agriculture as an economic resource, community health and well-being, focusing on sustainability in all forms, for the environment, but also for the community and community members, encouraging conservation, encouraging public engagement and education. And then legacy, sort of focusing on how to preserve things, and increase awareness of resources that make Littleton proud and make Littleton what it is. And these include heritage landscapes, farms, scenic roads, and other historic resources, Native American sites that Don was just talking about.
If you just go back to the previous slide, when we talked earlier about maintaining the trails as well as building the trails, people want wide trails, keep away ticks. So I'm looking at that picture on the left of those two people riding down that path. That thing is totally overgrown up until yesterday.
Did you see it today?
Yeah. So it took some effort. I don't know if it was who paid for that. They said some landscaping company and Rick and somebody else was in there.
Yeah, Carl Liverberg did it from Landmark.
Oh.
Kobe Field used to mow it when they were paying him to do the fields. He would just do that, but they're not paying him to do the fields anymore. So whoever's doing the fields.
This is an example. We need a program
No one's
for
doing
keeping the trails clear as well as getting new trails.
Yeah.
So I don't know, did we put that anywhere
Clearly.
in here or?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. Yeah, talking about maintenance and management of existing resources is important.
Especially mowing. I'm not buying any more fields. Buy all the woods you want.
Or you just have to get the highway staff to be able to do it.
Stacked up, yeah.
Staffed up, yeah. They'll do it. It's just there's not enough people.
I offered to buy them a mower, but they said they had the mower. They didn't have
They
staff.
just don't have people.
Where
Yeah.
is that photo? Where's
That's
that?
Cooper Farm.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's the side one that we were kind of
Yeah.
talking about that would
Yeah,
connect
that connects the
Goldsmith.
Newtown Road,
Yeah.
Goldsmith.
Mhm.
Yeah, it actually does connect them. One of the builders built a real nice bridge.
Yeah.
Over the.
Well, that was part of.
Yeah, that was Steve
Yeah.
Marsh.
It's all ready to go. We just gotta keep it clear.
Signage.
Well, also just a comment, the Conservation Trust actually has spent money on town trails to maintain it. And there, for a long time, the stewardship committee supported the town too, unlike other towns. So not only Conservation Trust land, but conservation land itself, municipal conservation land. So they've tried to withdraw a little bit from that. As you say, yeah, you need to keep trails going. The town saves a lot of money not paying for the schooling and stuff if houses are there. But yeah, people object when the town spends money to maintain the trails. I mean, there's a small cost to maintaining trails. And yeah, that's sort of what you're saying. And
The trust puts extraordinary effort into maintaining the trails with their own equipment. So it's.
yeah. And donations, we pay like $10,000 for meadow part of the orchard, and even the neighbors have too. The shares when they lived across the street.
So one thing that I wanted to mention is part of the trail network when we're looking at potential ours expanding. Chuck keeps bringing up and like there's all these easements in town for the power lines and the gas lines, and there's talk of, can we use those as bike trails or other trails that we should figure out. It should be a potential in the plan so that we have more push behind it.
Right, there's been successful working permission with AT&T, but that should be continued, yeah. I mean, it's a good thing to point out. I know the AT&T, the buried lines have right of ways, And, if they are active, you can contact them and talk to them. Other utility lines, I'm not quite sure about that.
That brings up the microwave tower site where it has they maintain the access road and the parking lot, which I use sometimes to access Long Lake Park. I've never been clear whether that's kosher or not. I mean, other people do it. Is there some formal agreement or?
Not that I know of. On occasion,
Yeah.
I've seen hoses thrown from there onto the Long Lake land.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should get some sort of agreement. But, they're concerned about liability.
Of course, but they mow it and they, do this and that, and it's, anyway.
Don't ask them to.
Okay, well, that's fine, yeah, and someone, I
It's
guess
working.
it's, mows the,
The
paths in the
entrance.
field,
Yeah,
which is incredible, I mean, that's a lot of work,
I think it was Jim the last.
Jim
couple
O'Neill's
of
been doing
times.
that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's often the
Scott Wazinski
conservation
used to do a
trust
bunch
that
of
will do
mowing, but-
stuff on the side.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Scott Wazinski used to do a bunch of mowing, especially
Yeah.
near the fire station,
But I think people are using the right of ways. There are the AT&T on that property on Oak Hill. There's I think it's a gas line that sort of goes up and over.
Yeah.
And I've seen mountain bikers.
Yeah, the Algonquin
Yeah.
line to
Right.
Long Lake Park. Yeah, so I mean, it's good getting agreements when we can, but yeah, it's worthwhile.
Browns Woods uses AT&T, but that's not an occupied
Mhm.
easement right now. And a lot of the grid, overhead stuff is across private property too. Their easement.
There's a concept in planning called desire lines where you try to see where people are walking, even if they're not supposed to be, and then figure out how to make those legit places to walk. It's good to do in the snow. But
If they would go cross country ski out there in the AT&T.
I think one of the ones Chuck is specifically referring to is the gas line that goes parallel to Route 2.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Because that would go, except it's really, part of it's really wet, almost from the train station back to Newtown Road.
Yeah.
And the DOT surplus parcel in that area. We have a little tiny loop in there.
I'm gonna guide us back to the vision statement, and if there's some specific actions related to trails, I think that would be great to keep in mind. But so this was the 2016 vision statement we looked at last time, and these were additions from the committee. We emphasized access to water bodies and making health of water systems important. Talked about adding more discussion of climate resilience to the vision statement, and then thinking about historical and cultural aspects and health, community health. So we took all of those things and we thought about some key themes, and it seemed like perhaps currently, I'm sorry, so these are sort of the main themes. I'm actually going to go through this quickly because I think it would be good just to get to the vision statement, but we can come back to this if it's helpful to break down what's going on in the vision statement. This is the vision statement. I apologize that you got such short notice to read it before the meeting. If you did get to read it, that's great. If you didn't, I think we should take a minute right now to read it. I'll read through it just in case the font's too small or anything. And just take a minute, and then we can pause and respond and hear your feedback. So this is in the section 6, community vision. Littleton's open space system protects core wildlife habitats and corridors and key surface waters and aquifers to ensure ecological health, quality drinking water, and resilience in the face of climate change. The protection of working farms is also prioritized to sustain Littleton's agricultural heritage, rural landscapes, and access to local food. Littleton invests in community health and youth development by providing adequate athletic fields, playgrounds, and facilities, and inclusive programs for all ages and abilities. Equity and access guide the planning of recreational resources, and every neighborhood has a nearby park, trail, or recreational area. Safe and comfortable bicycle and pedestrian connections provide access to destinations such as food, schools, shopping centers, conservation areas, and public transit, while boating facilities provide access to the Great Ponds. Town-owned trails and recreation facilities are designed to meet all physical needs and abilities. Maintenance and stewardship of Littleton's natural, cultural, and recreational resources ensures their ability to meet the needs of future populations, while land use policies coordinate population growth with conservation. Residents are actively involved in guiding Littleton's stewardship and the celebration of its most valued community assets. And so the way we were thinking about this vision statement is sort of chunking it into 3 groups here. The first paragraph is sort of one of the main themes in the master plan was how does Littleton prioritize its conservation? So this first paragraph tries to say what are the conservation priorities and why. The second paragraph is about recreation and connectivity, which also includes accessibility and ADA accessibility, equity and access as well. And the third paragraph is about maintenance and stewardship and community engagement and thinking about how that relates also to sustainability and climate resilience. So thinking about how to maintain the resources so that they can be resilient to climate change is an important topic for this plan.
Hey, Jack,
So, yeah,
you said in the priorities that climate change didn't make the top 5, but yet it shows up here. Did all the ones that were in the top 5, they weren't pushed out by climate change, were they? Then that wouldn't be according with the survey.
yeah. So, yeah, the survey was one source of input, and like as we pointed out, climate resilience didn't rise to the surface of priorities for people in the survey, but it also, I think, it came up in the committee as a committee priority, and it seems important and responsible to make it part of this plan. I don't know if Jerry, I don't know if I'm understanding you right though.
Well, you pointed out in the beginning that climate resiliency didn't make the top 5, but now I see it in there. So I'm just, does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what came out in the survey show up in our vision statement? In other words, we asked the public's opinion, they gave us their opinion. I just want to make sure it's reflected in the vision statement, and we just didn't put in our own priority in there.
Although it was reflecting the histogram, like the second one, biodiversity, etc. I mean, that's reflected in climate resiliency. I mean, it shows up in other ways. Yeah.
Okay, but it would.
If I'm looking at so I have all of the data from the survey, so it looks like, and Jack, you can correct me if any of this doesn't seem right. The drinking water quality was the top one, right? We've got that in there. Looks like second was beauty and character of landscape.
Yeah, so there's climate resiliency all the way down the bottom.
Youth development.
So
it's a separate category, but maybe they don't recognize.
It's at the lowest.
What is
But there's more than one source of information going into this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's important. The survey is not the only thing informing this plan, but
right.
it's one piece of information. The survey is not a scientific survey, and this is the weighted score. Doesn't mean people don't value climate resilience. But when we look at what people did say they value, I think maybe the more important point here is, do we include what people say they do value in the vision statement? So I think we do try to, so I think we can evaluate that now. Does the vision statement talk effectively about water quality, beauty and character, landscape, youth development, enjoyment and quality of life, agricultural health and local food, and equity and access? For, those are the top 6. This is sort of arbitrary. If we look at the scores, the spread isn't, that huge. So, and then these were what came up from the public meeting. Again, youth development was something people like to talk about a lot. And then ecological health and biodiversity, as Don just mentioned, is a part of climate resilience. So it's sort of, how do you frame it? And so we'll go back to I think what's important is just that we are making sure we are valuing. The statement is touching on things that people have said they do value. So if it's missing that, then we should make sure it's there. When I looking back right now, we emphasize the recreation paragraph puts community health and youth development at the very top to make sure that was really emphasized. We want to make sure we emphasize ecological health, and that's in the first paragraph about conservation and drinking water, key surface waters, and also quality drinking water is there. Perhaps and then connectivity was not, that seems to have come up in different places, so that we want to make sure that was there. What's maybe not here is there's not a big emphasis on in fun and enjoyment. So if that felt like something to put in here, then we could make that more of a part of maybe the recreational component or the last paragraph somehow.
Yeah, I think equity and access was part of the top 5, and that isn't showing on the left.
It is.
He's got the design to meet all physical.
Yeah, I saw it over there, but I thought
equity.
the first paragraph we're looking at is the primary one, and
Oh, no, he's broken
no.
up into, yeah, sorry, Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, the first paragraph is, oops. The first paragraph is about conservation priorities. So we want to make sure we talked about water, wildlife, habitat and corridors, agriculture, heritage landscapes, and historic sites. The second paragraph is about recreation priorities, and that's where we talk about equity and access and other recreational priorities. So that, if you see in the second paragraph, equity and access is sort of 4 lines down.
okay, I see it there. I used to let the
Sort of.
paragraph, the order of priority, but they're not.
Yeah, one of the places climate resiliency will show up is like the water quality along the lake. That isn't drinking water, that's recreation. And yeah, like rain gardens. There was one that was meant for Aspen Street, which is where the Silverberg area is. Plus also there's a lot of grant money out there. So yeah, if you have something that you can point to, if you're going for grants or something like that.
And this statement is definitely aspirational.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I'm looking at the statement and going, it's not that way now.
Yeah. Because I would also say for the last sentence in the second paragraph, designed to meet all physical needs and abilities.
we're not
We're
there.
not.
Not
No,
even
and we will not, we don't necessarily want to be. You want some wild trails.
Yep,
So it's, yeah.
Well, I actually,
It's a vision.
I had a question about the last sentence in the first paragraph there about protecting working farms, and I think it's a great goal, but I'm wondering what this plan is going to do to protect working farms.
That,
So it's really not.
It's
right?
just a goal, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
it's a
we're,
vision, you know.
it's a vision, it's a vision
Right.
yeah,
statement.
but the plan says that we're trying to prioritize that thing. It just seems like the plan should have something in it around what should be done.
well, that would be in the next section.
Correct.
Yeah, I just don't know.
And the action plan, so.
I would say along those lines, you change the word protection to support. The support is what people can do to buy their stuff from local farms.
Well, okay, it could be. I might be jumping the gun on what it is, but yeah.
Okay, because protection, I
There's
know,
many,
it's difficult.
right. Maybe we start a farmer's market, maybe we,
Yeah,
it's a
everybody
bigger
wants to
part of
sell their
their
land to the
Thursday.
town, But
you know,
just supporting
yeah.
it is something all people in town can do.
Yeah, but protection would also cover where you are in the Sanderson field and Wickham Ave, you know, for grants for the APR and so on.
Yeah.
And also Jamie Cruz's land, which I know there's concern whether the family wants to sell off it or not. So yeah, protection, I think there are different ways to do
Okay.
protection.
But Jerry, you know, granted, not everyone wants to sell the town, the town, their farm. However, there are many people in town who would want the town to buy those farms. And I think that's, I don't think we have to be specific about anything, but that's a often expressed goal of anyone who patronizes community agriculture.
Yeah, and with state support and state grants, I mean,
Yeah.
one of the ways to protect.
Yeah, I mean, we can, I don't know if protection is the perfect word, But again, I mean, the purpose of the vision is kind of to say, this is our, as you said, this is our aspiration for the future state of the town. So in the future, we want farms to still exist. And we want to ensure that they're around because they represent the heritage of the town and they're beautiful and they provide local food. And then it will be in the sort of the goals and objectives and actions where you sort of say, this is what we want to do to help farms, to make sure that farms, to the extent possible, are still here in the future.
Again, maybe to the broader point of Gary and others maybe mistook the structure for priority as opposed to broad themes. Are those broad themes really the way we want to structure the vision statement?
Did you say that again? So broad themes really this way we want to start what?
Structure the vision statement. Yeah, is it going conservation, recreation, stewardship? Is that the structure that we want to use, or is there some other sort of broad first and narrow? I don't know. I don't have a better alternative at the moment, but it does. I kind of have the same initial reaction of, the first paragraph should be kind of the high level and then maybe some more detail. I mean, the old vision statement was one paragraph, so we're already.
That's why I got. That's the most important one.
So just putting that out there as a question or a thought. That is that a clear?
Well, maybe it's just a graphics thing, because
Something freeze?
Yeah, I can't hear. I don't know if it's like it froze.
If you're still with us, you are frozen and we can hear each other.
Are you guys there?
Yeah.
All right, we got kicked off and we're back.
Didn't pay the bill?
I guess not.
Thanks. I don't know if it was Saul who was talking or Jeff. I can't remember.
Well,
Okay.
Absolutely. Do
do you want to pull that down?
I don't know when it broke off.
Okay.
I think Jeff was talking about maybe it's a formatting issue,
or some kind of outline.
highlighting graphics,
Yeah.
something.
Because I can see how you did try to bring in all the, community input, all the various, top 10. I just want to.
But there's a difference between what the vision is
Right.
of it and the aspirational piece of it. Because the vision is for, I don't know, more water access for boating. The aspiration is there's access to all the lakes. I mean, that's two very different kinds of statements.
Yeah,
In there.
and without being specific about which lake.
That specificity might come later, though.
Possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a hard task for us to, propose specific. I mean, Mark just left, but I personally don't see this, and I might be wrong, as proposing specific, acquire this, do that, I mean, is that the
We
purpose
can't
of
really
this plan?
do-
I don't
we-
think so. Could we all agree on that? I mean, I don't see that.
That gets a little like,
Oh, they
Or a
do.
lot.
It can be in there.
It
in
can
the
be.
goals, or especially like maybe not this parcel but this part of town
right.
needs open, you know, something along those lines.
And that was one of the, when we asked the question about like do you feel that you have a space within 10 minutes? Because when we look at where everything is, it's like in the middle, especially speaking for Parks and Recreation, right? You've got Fay Park, 300 King are like right next to each other. And then the beach is just down the road, but there's a whole area where there's no parks, recreational parks out there. There's no playgrounds. It's all just like a void area.
Got that field of turkey.
Yeah, let's go.
Share a parking lot.
So just, to focus our feedback here, it's really helpful, by the way, and thank you for all these good questions and comments. I think it's, Saul points out a very good question. Is this the structure, is this the structure that makes sense? I think, as you seem to understand, this structure is not that of like big picture down. It's each paragraph is about a different theme. And because there's limited space, it seemed like just to get right to conservation right off the bat, recreation, maintenance, stewardship, and give equal space to all three of those was the way we approached it. But I think we could change that. We could make it more like overarching big idea. I think it's just harder actually. What are the things that tie all three of these things together? Because each one have specific values and goals. And this seemed like a more straightforward approach. If we do it this way, I think it is entirely possible we could put an introductory paragraph explaining how this statement is structured so that people know how to read it. It's like this statement has three components. The first is dealing with conservation, then recreation, then maintenance and stewardship. If that would be helpful. But I think, I think we shouldn't spend too much more time on this because we want to talk about goals and objectives as well. So I would like to get more feedback on that question to know if we should tweak this. And then if you want to provide more specific red line changes, please do that as well. You're entirely welcome to send red line changes via email. That would be welcome.
Jack, is this the only part of section 6, or is there something in there about the process and some of that other stuff as well?
Yeah, that's right. I think section 6 has A is the process. So what was the community engagement process, and B is where did that lead to? What are the vision and goals that it led to? And then the goals are supposed to come right out of the vision, sort of. And not every OSRP actually has a vision statement, from what I've seen. But I think it seems good to have. It seems like it's
the vision statement is really kind of a summary of the goals. It's kind of like a narrative, almost like the proverbial elevator speech, right? It's like, these are the things that we want the town to be like in the future, the things we want to focus on in the future, in kind of overarching themes. And then the goals and objectives break each of those themes down in more detail. So there's no right way to do this. I mean, partly is your reaction is you're representing the reaction of other people in town, and that's really what it's for. It's sort of like, can we get around sort of a shared statement of what we want to be as a community in terms of open space and recreation?
So to Jack's point, I think that a paragraph perhaps explaining the structure would be very helpful. I happen to, I'm a fan of what's written here. I know that the committee has concerns that we can certainly visit, but maybe a draft paragraph just introducing the statement and why it's laid out the way it is. And
or maybe just a sentence or two.
Or maybe even just, if it were blocked conservation, recreation, stewardship, and columns.
Yeah.
I think it's a graphics thing.
That just takes up more space. But yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, is they just need little headers.
Yeah, the header, it may be very simple to do this. It just I think, more than one of us was confused off the bat, so that's not a good sign.
And more than one of us didn't read the original header that said vision.
Yeah, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
And then you get into, like if I personally was to pick apart, say the first paragraph, I would not lead with protects core wildlife habitats. I don't think that's the primary community vision.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could pick apart this forever. So,
Well, actually, Jeff, that's interesting to hear you say. So yeah, because one of the things that came up in the master plan over and over again is how does Littleton prioritize its conservation goals? Or like how does Littleton make conservation decisions? What are its priorities? So I think it's good to know what you think the priorities should be here.
I see. So you're saying that's a way of ranking acquisition of parcels.
Yeah,
one of the
it can be
things.
both. It's very valuable in and of itself,
Right.
or it's also valuable because it connects to all these things, either for
Right.
humans or wildlife. Or
Uh-oh.
Maybe we should move on to, I think it'll be clear if we start talking about the goals and objectives.
Okay.
I guess I wanted to ask for those of you on the committee, I mean, how confusing is it to sort of talk about goals, objectives, and actions? Are you familiar with that structure for strategic planning? Uh-oh.
Yeah, I have lost them again.
Darn, we're frozen again. Have we talked about that structure before, Jake?
No, I think, oops. I think we should give a brief intro to that strategic planning structure. Yeah.
Right.
All right, we got kicked off again. We're back on.
Hello again.
Hi. I keeps doing that.
So,
All right.
we want to sort of start because I'm not sure, how familiar you are with the sort of using the structure of goals, objectives, and actions at kind of 3 different tiers of a strategic plan. Because that's what we're proposing. I want to see if how many people are totally confused by that, and how many of you maybe have used that before.
What's the difference between goals and objectives?
Well, yeah, I mean, so goal is kind of a future destination, right? It's very much, if you think of it as a practical matter, it's like, where are we trying to go? We're trying to, drive to California, and our goal is to be in San Francisco for New Year's Day or whatever it might be. So that's kind of a statement that says this is the future state that we're trying to achieve. And then objectives are sort of large steps in order to achieve that goal. So if you want to get to San Francisco, first you got to drive to Albany, and then Chicago, and then what's beyond Chicago? Colorado, you go out Route 90, and eventually you get to San Francisco. So your objective each day, because you can drive all day and get there in 3 or 4 days, is a particular city. And then there are actions that then allow you to achieve each of those objectives. So I've got to gas up the car, pack my clothes, get in the car, start driving. And that helps me achieve my objective of Chicago, say. And then the next objective is I've got to make sure I've got enough food to get across the Great Plains, have a place to stay in Colorado. And so I've got this lined up actions, got my Airbnb, and that it allows me to achieve the objective of reaching Colorado and so on. So if you think about it, an objective, a goal is kind of the future state or the destination. The objective is sort of a measurable step. It's like, did we get to Chicago? Have we protected enough land to maintain our ecosystem? Or to, do it over the next 50 years? And one objective might be we need to protect a certain piece of land or a certain type of land in the next 10 years, and that allows us eventually to reach the goal of protecting the whole ecosystem. And then, so for each of those objectives, again, there are specific actions, and that's really going to be what this plan is about in the end, because you're going to be assigning somebody on staff or volunteers or looking for grants or what have you to implement specific actions. And one of the things we noticed about the previous plan, which is not meant as a criticism, but it's sort of something that often happens, is that the goals and objectives and action get kind of muddled. And in the end, like we reviewed with you the sort of actions that have been taken since the last plan, and the things that have actually been done are very specific. But the previous plan was not so specific about which actions. So it's sort of like the actions were kind of made up, and to some extent, as you went along. So what we're after is to have sort of specific actions that'll help us achieve clear and measurable objectives that strategically are lined up to get us to a certain goal. Any questions about that? Or have I confused you further?
No, I think that's.
Although, I mean, it does seem that objectives, if the goal is enhancing the environment or something, and your objective is to control invasive species, your actions may not be very specific today, but a lot of it's kind of reactive also as we pull up. So there's certainly a mix of very specific actions, and some that might be a little more nebulous.
Right. I mean, I think in order to be useful, I mean, my observation is, an action should be something that you can actually tell somebody to do it, or say, I'm going to do this, and you've got somebody who's ready to go, or you're saying, oh, we're going to hire somebody. Invasive species is a good, like dealing with invasive species is a good objective. Particularly, you can say we want to reach a certain level of treatment over the next 5 years, and that's your objective. Your action should be, well, what do we actually have to do? Which is hard, because it's hard to, which is why most plans don't get into enough detail, really. But we really want to say, we want to prioritize invasive species around Long Lake, in this particular corridor, or what have you, over the next 5 years, and that's our action. And we think we're going to need a certain amount of funding to do that action, or we're going to have to dedicate a certain amount of staff time or volunteer time to do it.
Or in Littleton's case, they have the Weed Warrior program. So maintaining the Weed Warrior program would be an action serving that objective, and that objective of invasive species would serve goal 3 of stewardship and climate resilience. And so it's a nice, because everything is linked, and it all links back to what are the overarching goals here, and which can help make decisions about how to invest and what the investment is for.
Have you been able to go through at all the like the 7-year action plan or whatever it is, or is that what you really expect us to give you a lot of help with what's been done? I'd just be curious how it's all, if it's falling together yet or not.
I think is that what you sent over today, Jack?
So what we sent over today is our goals and objectives, which then
is the next.
Okay.
All the actions would be nested in the objectives. And so actually, Amy, you and Alicia and Marin have already been very helpful in going through all the 2016 action plan, which we did, and you provided some detailed notes for that. And that was really helpful to see, what still is applicable and what we can check off the list. But that's the next step after tonight's meeting, is to figure out what are the actions that can make sure these objectives are reached. And the objectives, we want to make sure we got the right goals and objectives first to then know what the action should be.
I would tend to think the goals be teased apart a little more. I don't know. Like, should agriculture be its own goal or whatever, rather than mixed up with conservation? I mean, it's sort of a, are you a lumper or a splitter? That's kind of the.
Yeah, it's definitely a lumping or splitting. One of the observations we had looking at the previous plan, I think you have the goals and priorities on the previous slide, Jack. You put that up. So there was a lot of goals, all of which are important. And each goal, there was a priority listed, which was basically kind of an objective, the way it was described. But it almost seemed like there's so many different goals the way this is split up that it's hard to really see what the big idea is. So we thought by having sort of 4 major goals.
I mean, I certainly see that, although I don't think 9 is a lot, but if you lump agriculture and I think was historic and natural environment all together, which one in that goal is your priority? Because someone's gonna kind of lose.
Yeah.
Whereas if you split them, at least you have a priority, which strictly speaking, if I'm going for a grant, that's priority 1 of goal number 2.
Yeah.
You know, it is
Right.
not priority 4 of goal number 1.
Yeah.
Well, I guess within each of these
You
goals,
only have, like the way it was structured before, you had goals and you had one, there was no second priority under any of your goals, right? Which seems,
Well, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a whole list of
Okay.
objectives underneath each goal.
so this is just.
So this is just a summary of number 1
Okay, got
for
it,
each of them.
all right,
And then the next section is the action
got it.
that goes with it.
Yeah, so Amy, I think noting that comment, and I think we can keep that in mind, and maybe we'll just go through the goals and objectives and then circle back to that question of, do we want to lump or split more? Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so these are the 4 buckets that are the broad goals, thinking about conservation, having multiple priorities as sort of is seen here. It's not, so the conservation includes protecting drinking water resources, ecological resources, agricultural resources, historical resources, and also thinking about climate resilience. The second goal is about recreation, provide recreational opportunities and enhance connectivity for Littleton residents to promote community health and sustainability. Thinking sustainability broadly about both the environment and the community. Goal 3 is stewardship and climate resilience. So relating that stewardship back to long-term resilience. Promote responsible and active stewardship of Littleton's natural, cultural, and recreational resources to ensure the town's ability to respond to climate change and meet the needs of future populations. And then, while community engagement is important to all of these goals, we created a separate goal for it just to make sure that it did get appropriate emphasis. So deepen public awareness and engagement with open space and recreation goals to promote community resilience. When we break these down, each of these goals has like 7 to 9 objectives. These objectives are taken from the last plan, which had both objectives and actions, but the action plan didn't group the actions by objectives. It just had actions. So these are some are new, some are old. We tried to make sure they are relevant. It's a lot to read, so it might be a little tedious and difficult to go through them all right now. But just to give a flavor, so these are the objectives that are trying to lead towards this first goal of conservation. And so as we were just talking about, this does mean having both different types of conservation in one group. The first objective is about surface water protection. So having a comprehensive strategy for that. The second objective is how to identify and conserve lands that meet the different conservation goals, which include, or actually this objective is focused just on protecting ecological resources. The third objective is about working farmlands and agricultural resources, how to identify and conserve those. The fourth objective is identifying and conserving historic and cultural sites and resources. Then on the right-hand side, the fifth objective is how to sort of strategically do these things by coordinating with landowners and local organizations. The sixth is how to coordinate with the town, including the Community Preservation Committee, and finding local sources of funding. And the seventh is finding state and federal sources of funding. Is this a useful way to review this? Because we can do this for the other three goals, or how does this feel? Do we want to pause and comment on
And
this?
would you not necessarily be prioritizing these like we did in the last one? This is just a list in no particular order.
Right, that's a good question. So each of these objectives, we could prioritize the objectives, or we could prioritize the actions under these objectives.
Like that. Yeah, that works.
So
In some ways, you prioritize the objectives by creating actions. And I think if you can't think of an action to meet a particular objective, you eliminate the objective, right? Because, as I said, I mean, many plans, they're just a long list of things that nobody ever does. So part of the next step is to really think about, is it important? Is the objective of, conserving land with historic and cultural value important? And therefore, what do we want to do about it over the next 5 years? And let's list some actions that somebody could actually take to make that objective a reality. So I guess the first step is, there's no right answer for this in terms of, how many goals, how many objectives, et cetera. But this sort of feels like a manageable structure that groups them in sort of the major themes of conservation and recreation, and sort of what do we want to protect? What do we want to develop in terms of recreation? And then how are we going to maintain that so we don't lose what we've got and already protected? And then the last one, how do we do the outreach? So those are our major goals. So how do we involve the public? And then under those, the next question for you, and we don't have to finish this tonight, is to sort of have we captured all the things that we want to do in these objectives? And then we could sort the actions you've taken over the last 5 years into these objectives, and then think about what else we want to do.
We didn't get this, did we? I don't remember seeing this. Okay. All right. Make sure I'm not.
There's a Word document that has this. And I share that with you, Alicia, and I'm sorry, the committee, that you didn't get to this before, because we just shared this today. So
We got the vision piece of it.
Yeah. And this one, I think this is the one. Yeah, this one I just got a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Well, I guess no matter how we split or lump things, it's always the potential for objectives to kind of butt heads. You need land, I need land. And that's never going to go away.
Yeah.
I don't know if I put stewardship and climate. Was it climate change? Whichever one you had that for in one.
Oh. Yeah, so.
But maybe you don't want to get into nitty gritty tonight. I don't know.
I was looking at
I haven't eaten yet.
Yes.
Maxed out myself.
So perhaps, Jack and Peter, if you could send this, or we just got it today, so we can distribute this out to the committee, review it, and perhaps dive a little deeper into it at the next meeting.
Is it helpful for me to summarize the objectives right now? I can try to highlight them as I go along. If it's not helpful, then we won't do that.
But as an example, somewhere in here under one of these objectives, an action plan will be to increase CPC funding to 2%. That's a pretty specific.
So
Right.
I guess, could you just go over the overall, because, okay, now I'm seeing the goal versus objective,
Yeah.
but I'm also hearing action. Like, where does that
Next section.
Okay.
Yeah.
To give a sense of where this is leading,
Yes.
section 9 is the action plan, 7-year action plan. The way that's way we intend to structure that is to have each goal and then a table that has the different objectives for that goal, the actions that help lead to that objective, complete that objective, and then who, when, and what resources are required. So this first goal is about conservation, and the first objective is about protecting surface waters and aquifers and the watersheds that feed them. One of the actions to do that is coordinating the town surface and subsurface protection of water with the different departments and committees involved. And then it has those committees listed as the responsible ones to do that. And then, so there would be a number of actions that are about specific to meeting the goal of protecting surface waters and aquifers.
Yeah, and I would argue that, an action like this is even a bit too vague. It's like, well, what does it mean to coordinate protection of the town's surface? And
Right.
surface?
Yeah.
So, I don't know how you handle that coordination now, but I would say institute, yearly, quarterly meetings between these 3 different groups to talk about priorities for surface and subsurface water protection. That would be a clear action that you could say, well, did we do that?
That's a very good point.
Well, I would add that a lot of this occurs, well, obviously CONSCOM, but also planning board. We have to give waivers and approvals to all kinds of aquifer related. Not that we're in the middle of planning it, but we take action on it.
Right. So, that's an action that a lot of towns take, which is let's look at our stormwater regulations and bylaws and update them, to more effectively protect water quality while development is happening. And then that feeds into your site plan review criteria and so on. So again, we're not going to list all the actions tonight, but this is what I want you to be sort of thinking about. Is, what's very specifically, what do we want to do in order to meet that objective? And if we can't think of anything and no one's interested, let's not put the objective in for this plan, because it doesn't mean anything if nothing's going to happen over the next 5 years.
And also, so you do have draft objectives that we can respond to.
Right. So yeah. So we have the draft goals, and each of those draft goals has draft objectives. We have actions that we know were done or need to still be done from 2016. And, but I think we need probably more input on what actions could meet these objectives as well.
This is going to be painful.
I know.
Also, it seems like there's a lot of overlap with
There's a lot of overlap, yeah.
the
I
one.
was thinking maybe we just like split up, you take goal 1, you take goal 2, but we're all interested in all of them.
Yeah.
But it's,
I'm just, I don't know, this seems duplicative of other goals and actions, but I don't know, I haven't looked at it closely.
It's hard. It's definitely hard to, there's a lot here. Try not to be duplicative. So if there is parts that are duplicative, then that feedback would be helpful. But I would like to continue to summarize it so you have a sense of where it's going. And then, but if that's kind of hard to digest without actually having paper copy in front of you, then that makes sense too.
Jack, can you just really quickly go to the action section of your slide here? So I think this is the area where we're going to be able to clearly, there is going to be a duplication no matter what we do. But I think this is the area where it's like, well, we can bring that back to, this is, if we said that there has to be a quarterly meeting, then this is, maybe this one is part of the topic for the agenda to talk about during that quarterly meeting. And then maybe goal 5 or, whatever, that's also going to be part of that meeting. So when we go through and we have all of these things cordoned out like we do in the previous book, that's going to be maybe where we can sort of consolidate everything together a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I think
You know what I
there is
mean?
gonna be a lot of duplication, and I kind
Yeah.
of like having too much in
Okay,
front of us so we can cut it.
yeah.
So at least we
Yeah.
can make that choice, but
And this brings up something, we have this master plan implementation
Right,
committee.
yeah.
Should we
Yeah.
have an open space plan implementation?
We do.
No, we do.
We do?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Goal achieved.
However.
Yeah, however, yeah, we need to, yeah,
Okay,
I think we need to be more proactive
Yeah.
with
Those
it.
cats.
And
Yeah.
what's that?
Need to herd those cats.
We need to herd those cats. Well said.
well, I know that the master plan one is having a hard time.
Yeah.
Pushing and,
But they did, I mean, they came to us all and they said,
yeah.
for God's sakes, give me something, what have you done?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Jack, can you go back to the
We did, I did.
goals 3 and goal 3? So I guess this is a question. I mean, you've recognized that this, some of these objectives could be duplicative of, the first goal, which was, but I think where we're going with this, and Jack, you correct me, is that the first goal is really about what do we want to protect in terms of the landscape. What do we need to protect and conserve for the future? And then the third goal is really responding to what people often have said, which is that, protection is no good if you're not taking care of it. So we wanted to have a clear goal that was about stewardship and actually taking care of the stuff that we've already protected. So I think if it's an objective about additional conservation and protection of more water quality areas or whatever, it should go under goal 1 as an objective. If it's about stewardship and actions about, getting people involved in making plans and spending money on maintaining existing properties, it should go under this section. The idea being that we don't want to just be protecting land without also having the goal of taking care of it.
Yeah, that's right. And so you're welcome to disagree with that way of structuring this, but that is how, I think, before it had the goal, we just lost it again.
I think we're back.
You're trying to give us a hint?
No, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna put on my hotspot and see if that can be a backup. Go ahead, you guys can keep going.
Anyway, if we do definitely want to avoid duplication of objectives between the different goals. So, but I'm hopeful that the way it's structured, it'll fit in one place or another. And I think it is good to have a separate goal. I mean, personally, for stewardship, because we've heard a lot about that from people in town over the years.
We could all think of action items for that.
And it's also a lot of the actions that you've been taking over the last 5 years are about stewardship and not so much about additional conservation.
well, but I mean, there's always gonna be, buying Brown's Woods was both increasing conservation land, and we got the MVP grant for it, so
Right.
it's in both boxes, in 3D. Maybe we'll pop up.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying, Amy, is that sometimes the management comes with the acquisition, or like the funding might be for both of those, for example.
Yeah, that purchase checked off 2 different boxes,
Mhm.
or even 3, because it connected trails, Long Lake, all the way down to the train station. It got the resiliency, the MVP grant. I mean, it checked all sorts of boxes.
So I think the best thing we could do right now is just try to frame this structure so that you can understand it and think about it and see if you agree with it or not. I do want to make sure that we can frame it so that you understand what it is trying to do at least, and you can decide if you agree with that or not. And I think Peter just made a good point about that. We teased apart the protection being goal 1. What are the priorities for acquisition and protection? And goal 3 is about stewardship and policies that help plan for managing those lands and balancing development with protection, treating invasive species. And so that's why goal 3 links back to climate resilience, is because it's how to maintain the lands in a way that can make them more resilient to climate resilience, to climate change. I think community engagement is the 4th goal, which definitely relates to all of the other goals. But by giving it its own goal, hopefully would make it easy to see, to make sure that, it takes a lot of effort to engage the community. And so it seems like it's worth having its own goal. There's funding is integrated into all of these. And like sometimes that might get messy because one grant might relate to multiple of these goals, but sometimes, for straight up land acquisition, that might be one source of funding. And then for more of a land management project might be a different source. And then recreation includes the connectivity piece. So how to make sure different parts of town are connected through trails and bike paths. It also includes the accessibility.
Are we allowed to cheat at all here and pull the bike and ped plan? I know it'll be incorporated by reference, but do they have goals, objectives, and 7-year action plan? I don't even know what
I have I'm not involved in it, but I think that they do have
They must have something, yeah.
a plan similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of that, actually I tried to put in here as many goals or objectives or actions that are in the master plan as possible. So just to build on what the master plan has already established as priorities and goals, to try to repeat them in the OSRP and have them be reinforcing those goals.
How are we gonna do that?
What's that?
I said, how we do that? 'Cause if we all go our different ways and look at the goals, you might go one direction, I'm going the other, and then we come back and
I think it's gonna be more of the action plan.
Yeah, I think
It's sort of specific, becomes more specific.
so we'll leave 4 goals.
I mean, could it be 3? Maybe, but it's not 9.
Oh, I was thinking 8.
Yeah. I mean, this had 9 and that's a lot of goals, so.
I mean, what I would recommend you do is think about these objectives, see if there's any that we're missing, and then list goals for those objectives. And I think that will make your priorities clear. It's like not goals for those objectives, actions, sorry. Try to list specific actions for objectives, and I think that'll make your priorities pop out.
I think to your point about dividing, I mean, you might maybe not this divide necessarily as a full goal, but say, you know, conservation could be conservation of water and natural resources, conservation of historical and cultural resources, conservation of whatever the third set of things in there was.
So like sub goals underneath.
Kind of breaking it up a little bit, but keeping the four main themes. Recreation is kind of the sort of organized, structured recreation versus outdoor-based recreation.
So you have this in a Word document?
Yes, yep, goals and objectives. Yep. Is there a way to set a specific way to follow up on this?
That's a good question.
I mean, we could have like a deadline for reviews if you want to do it that way.
Do we want to do it just attaching our comments and with the distribution list that you have, or?
How do we do that in a way that, trying to think, do we do like a Google document where you can add to it and, you know, I don't know if everybody's like a different color or something.
See what
I'm just
somebody
trying to
else has
think of,
added.
yeah, so that people aren't like deleting what other people put, maybe, no, accidentally,
Oh,
it
yeah,
happens
yeah.
all the time.
No, I agree.
And you can kind of see, oh, well, all right, I wanted to make that point, but you know, Jeff already did that, so sweet, you know, I don't have to add that in again.
Can we really
I don't
do
know.
that?
That might break the open meeting law, actually.
Oh,
Yeah, sure.
with edits?
Because you're.
Let me talk to
collaborating.
Diane.
Yeah.
Collaborating.
That is
Instead of an
Oh,
open
that's
meeting.
annoying.
It's even worse than an email chain, I think.
That's very
So it's even better.
okay.
I mean, I think the only thing you can do, we can each put you can start with the common document.
Yeah.
We can each put our comments in as opposed to edits. And then send it to one of them. And they can merge / compile the.
So
comment
rather than
edits.
to each other, to them.
Yeah, so it's
Okay,
not,
yeah.
you're not influencing
And
each
that would
other.
comply with-
Yeah,
Or, I mean, the other way.
I was just trying to be commonsensical so much for that. It's a dangerous thing.
I think that's I think that's probably what you have to do is do your edits or comments and send them to us. And
Yeah.
then compile it and send out something that hopefully is a coherent summary. Otherwise, you go back and read it and then have another meeting and hash it all out one at a time, which you probably don't have enough time in any given Tuesday to do that.
Yeah, and I'll just say that in reformatting these, we tried to make sure everything that was here was bundled into one of the other 4 goals, so that nothing is lost. But if this original structure is more appealing, then you know we can do that. This is sort of the default. So whatever feels most useful to you, the committee, as you know, on behalf of the town, the goal here is to be useful and implementable. So.
How does the committee feel just on a very macro level about this formatting versus the proposed formatting?
I, in general, feel when you hire a consultant that you should bend over backward to listen to what they say and what they're producing. And so this particular group has a lot of experience with these kinds of reports, and I think they're really working hard to make them legible. And as they said, we want to make this effective, something that you can use. So I'm not inclined to redo the wheel that they've presented us. I mean, the actual specific, action items and things like that, I think we have a lot of input in.
I generally agree, yeah. We go with the 4 goals for now. If we really feel like we're fighting something later on, we can try and split them or something, but I think, yeah, what we have now is a good place to start.
How do you guys feel about it?
I just feel like my energy is really getting diluted here.
That's I'm right there with them.
Yeah, what's the purpose of having this plan? It's to, when we see a grant that looks like it's something we want to do, we put it in and say, see, this is what the town wants to do as a whole, not just me as an individual, but the whole town wants to do this. So,
And see who's responsible for what.
yeah, so I think, going with what the consultants say, put it in there, that way we're covered. But I wonder if somewhere in there, we want to project out of what specific things we think we might want to do over the next 6 years and put them in specifically, so that if the grant comes up, they'll say, okay, it's not just all these motherhood statements in here of goals and whatnot. Here's the specific project the town wants to do, but we just don't have funding for it. And maybe that would focus us a little bit more.
I think that's the next step after this.
The action items.
Yeah, but then there's so many actions.
Well, yeah,
It looks like, we're never gonna do all those things.
So on one hand, you want to prioritize for what you want to do to move ahead strategically, but then opportunities come up
Yeah,
and hard to predict that other than having a more broad thing. So it's a trade-off. Yeah.
right. I think we started out great. We had the high goals and we got consolidated what the townsfolk told us. We put that in the goals. But as we go further and further down, it gets more and more verbose. And it's really hard to grasp for me.
So how do we get to the place where these action items are actually attainable and don't feel so daunting and overwhelming?
Well, right now, should we skip over goals, objectives, and just go to actions? And then work backwards and make sure there's a goal and objective for the things we want to do?
Yeah.
What do you?
So it's more strategic, but opportunities will come up and that's more tactical. And it may be an implementation committee that every year goes over, or quarterly, you decide what you sort out as to what you prioritize. Because, this goes for 7 years and it's a long stretch.
Jack and Peter, do you have any input on that tactic of going from the action items and then working backwards?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, it's an iterative process, and there's some things you want to do, and so the question is, I mean, part of what the goals, again, the structure with the goals and objectives, it's very verbose, and it's like, what are you talking about? But what it does is it allows, when you have an action in mind, then that may be very specific and doable, but you just need the money. It gives you a way to ask for that money in a way that easily relates to this larger structure of what you're trying to accomplish, which is often missing from, you've written grant proposals, lots, and you really want to try to find somebody that captures the reason why you're trying to do something, whether you're explaining it to town meeting or looking for money from a state or federal grant. So it's really helpful to have that larger structure in mind, even though most of you will never look at it again. But it also,
I've only got every other page. No, I don't get it.
You've seen our books, we're like, everything's like got little tabbies on there.
I mean, how many of you who aren't getting paid have ever looked at the list of goals and objectives from the last plan, right? It just.
Fair point, sir.
So from that perspective, we did the goals, and I think we all agreed on what the goals were. We got the survey. Let you do the priorities, the objectives, because of your experience and what's necessary to get the grants of breaking down the goals. And we just go to the actions and think of some actions that we want to do over the next 6 years, and then that you guys back that into the objectives.
Yeah, we'll figure out where to put them and how to sell it.
I think that would be incredibly helpful to have some really grounded actions that you want to do. That would be great input. Yeah.
But again, please make it very specific and doable.
Yeah.
Right.
Excellent. So,
French Lake. That was that like very fine. Mill pond.
Mill ponds, yeah.
Mill pond.
so,
How many homework items is that then? So if you feel inclined to comment on the existing list of goals and objectives, then Alicia, I'll reshare that again with just a little bit of an explanation summarizing sort of the best way to give feedback. And then
And the vision,
as well for the vision. Yeah.
The vision
which
statement too.
already changed a little bit. from
Yeah.
What we had, yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a way to do it. We all go back to whence we came. I came from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, and go back, what top 5 projects do we want
Oh, that's
to
right.
implement over the next couple of years? And everybody go back to what there came from to be part of this committee. And then next meeting, we bring those up and we talk about them, and we put in the ones in the plan that we think we all agree on.
And we attended the public meetings where people have come up with their own ideas. And that seems to me the most useful thing about these public meetings is that people, they're not waving their hands, they want specific stuff. And or some people do, and it's always interesting to
And they
hear
want to
what
be
they-
heard.
yeah.
Yeah, and part of this, again, part of the value of the structure is when somebody comes up with a crazy idea, you can look and say, does this help us achieve something that's part of a larger long-term plan for the town? And if so, maybe it's a good thing to support. If it has no relationship to anything you're trying to do, then maybe you could say, well, that's important, but we're not going to make it part of the plan.
Yeah.
So in terms of action items from tonight, I'm getting that we'll all review what's currently in place for goals and objectives and go back to our constituents, gather action items.
Well, just top 5 projects that we think Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee might particular issue would want to accomplish over the next couple of years. And if everybody brought that back to the next meeting, then we can agree to put it in the plan or not.
It's gotta be more than 5.
More than 5.
Well, you see, but are we being realistic? Because then we'll have 25 because we have 5 different constituencies. Are we really gonna get to that level?
I would have a hard time even coming up with 5.
Oh, I wouldn't
Oh,
know.
really?
I know.
But I bet you've come up with one,
Oh, yeah.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
No, and that's, and, I,
which makes sense.
But realistically, knowing the speed at which everything operates, you know what I mean?
Years.
Like 7 years, well, can you
yeah,
actually
but
get
when
done?
you're going for money,
Yeah.
if this is a
Oh,
state
yeah.
objective,
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, it also, again, depends if you're lumping or splitting your actions. Is it control invasive species or is it map the invasive species on every project? Go out and find, so it's,
oh,
We can
no,
split it.
it's gotta be control in Japanese novelty.
well, you see,
Ah,
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, come Tuesday night. He can't do it.
I know.
it's horrible.
Put it on the cover page.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Let's embrace it.
so let's work on that for the next meeting, and we'll go from there, and we'll come up with perhaps a robust list of sorry, now I'm mixing and matching my terms. We'll come up with a list of actions, perhaps for each of the objectives, and we'll further move along here.
yeah, I think for the committee to think of actions, not even worrying about the objectives, and just for what are your projects and goals and actions that you want to accomplish, the way Jerry said, is helpful without feeling too tethered to the structure we have, and then we can see how it maps back onto this structure and does it make sense. But I guess the question is, our next public meeting to go over this with the public is coming up. So are we going to be able to meet before then, or?
I mean, we should, I would
Just a
imagine.
deadline on this.
I know, well, yeah. September 21st is the actual,
That's the-
public hearing.
Oh, a public hearing.
That's
for
the
actual-
public-
It's a
That's-
document.
No.
Just
So the
another-
the last public hearing will be, September 21st. And then the document needs to be in, before November 1st, so we'll go with October 31st. Yeah, Halloween, let's go.
So we really need a draft by the 21st, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think that would be ideal, but it could also be a draft with options for people to consider. Because I think a good use of that meeting, obviously, is to get the public to help prioritize what's important to them. So we could have more stuff that we're talking about at that meeting than is going to end up in the final plan, and that's the point. It's like, help us winnow down this list, and like, what are you willing to spend money on over the next 5 years?
So the next public meeting is like goals, objectives, 7-year plan,
I was gonna ask what the
vision, announce
topic
it. What's the
title is for the third one.
stuff?
What is it officially, Jack?
I think it's officially review draft plan, which is a broad title.
Well, we're thinking that's not gonna be possible.
Well, how does the rest of it, like sections 1 through 5, look? The inventory type stuff, setting.
That's not ready to be shared yet. Yeah, that we have to just make sure.
But that's not something you would really talk about at a public meeting. I mean, typically you would focus on the goals and objectives and the big vision at this kind of a forum to try to get a sense of what the priorities are. And I would recommend we focus on that. And it's really like bringing everything back together. It's like showing people the maps, telling people who haven't heard, what we've heard from the public process, what we heard at the first and second workshops, and then saying, as a result, here's our recommendations, or your recommendations as a committee. But we really want you to give us some feedback as the general public as to what the priorities should be, and it's sort of answer questions. And I think some of the questions that have even come up tonight is like, is climate change important? Do we want to prioritize actions that are going to help in terms of stewardship of lands that may be threatened by more intense storms or drought or whatever it is that's been identified, or not? And so it's really trying to get a sense from people, if you're spending town money, would you rather build more trails, enhance connectivity, or spend money to do any of the other things? So I think it's like, if we can have a draft list of goals and objectives and actions and figure out an engaging way for people to react to those and set priorities, that would be a good use of that evening.
And the analysis of needs looks fairly, not really boilerplate, but it looked, at least in the old one, it's pretty kind of short and sweet. Section 6.
Yeah, I think focus on protecting water resources and making some connections between existing conservation areas, kind of filling in the gaps, and then the agricultural resources are among the more threatened resources in terms of for development. And so I think that's there on the list.
Okay, so,
Next
moving
meeting.
forward, next meeting, yes, we have to, we want to meet before the next workshop on the 21st.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Doesn't give us a lot of time for homework, but.
Well, the 21st is 3 weeks. Could we meet the week of the 11th? Like on the 12th or the 14th?
the 12th, we've got Park Commission.
14th would work for me.
Probably, maybe it will work.
That's a Thursday.
Yeah,
The only thing is we may have a planning board meeting that day.
Wednesday might be better.
I've got 2 meetings that night.
Okay.
So far, any day that week is okay for me.
It's a Thursday and earlier is better. For me.
Andrew, you got anything?
Thursday?
Yeah.
No, I should be clear on Thursday.
Not sure about the planning board.
But planning board.
I
Yeah.
don't know, we have a lot of meetings scheduled, so.
Yeah.
it may not be that.
What about you two?
Works for me.
Okay, that's good. Very good. Okay, so we're gonna say September 14th.
You want to shoot for
Time?
5:30?
What was it?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, time.
Oh, do you want to do 5:30, 5:15? 5:20? Go once.
Whatever. Yeah, whatever you want.
Let's do it on a half hour. I mean, it's kind of weird.
Yeah. All right, we'll do 5:30 then, so.
So this is the 14th?
Thursday the 14th.
Yeah.
So you can do both of them.
Yeah, planning board's at 6, so that's good.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot you guys started early.
Okay, so I will get that booked in, set up, and you want to do agenda for it.
Sure.
I'll see what space I can find us. Okay.
All right, excellent. Was there any other business that we had to touch on before? Let's see. So we went over the third public workshop, the ADA self-evaluation. Why don't we take that up at the next meeting? And then in terms of other outreach activities to gather input, is there anything that the committee has heard of or has maybe thought of in the last couple of weeks that we should perhaps be doing in addition to our efforts right now? It's real.
I guess one thing would be in terms of any extra outreach for the meeting on the 21st for your various committees and contacts. Think about the best way to get people to come out.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Which is are there booths beyond the vendors at Oktoberfest or is it just vendors?
We can always do that. Yeah. That's September 30th. Yeah. So that's after public hearing, but yeah.
Right on the card.
What's that?
Right on the card.
Yeah, it is. It is. But yeah, if we wanted to like have a table to talk to people about it, we could totally make anything happen. Whatever you want.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, perfect. So in terms of action items for the next meeting, again, if everyone could take a.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish that. I just wanted to.
Oh, certainly. If everyone could just have a look again at the goals and objectives that Peter and Jack have put together, and then just go back to your constituents and come up with actions that they'd like to accomplish over the next 7 years, and we'll compile this at the next meeting. Or yeah, and we'll go from there. That's all we do.
Yeah, well, no, I was thinking, based on what we've been talking about, I suspect that next meeting is gonna be fairly overwhelming, and we're not gonna get to anything else, as we're trying to get that draft together. So is there anything on the ADA self-evaluation that can be done, needs to be done? Get that out of the way, or, I don't know how we've sort of.
Yeah.
Keep throwing it out. Yeah.
So I just don't know what to do with it.
It is something that we have to address.
We have more work to do on that, and so if there's a way that you can help, like we'll reach out. But
Okay, that's on you guys, and
Yeah,
okay, good.
Cleaning up at this.
That's enough for me.
All right,
All right.
yeah, I mean, Jack, we can follow up on that.
all right, great, Alicia.
All right. Committee members, anything further? Jack and Peter, anything further?
Thank you.
Thank you for coming as always.
Yeah, thanks for your input.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Uh,
Aye. All right, we're adjourned. Thanks again. Have a great night.
Night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, what did the planning board decide?